And good evening, Larry Krueger, back with you for Niners Nightly as we come to you tonight on the KMBR YouTube channel. And we got a fantastic hour for you as we get you ready for the Niners and the Seahawks coming up this Sunday. Week 1 in the NFL has arrived. We get the first game tomorrow. And then, Eagles, Cowboys, and then, of course, the Niners on Sunday. We also have a Friday night game, a Monday night game. We got a full slate to look at. Mitchell and Ness, first man in the chat tonight, says Larry. By the way, joining us bottom of the hour will be Steph Sanchez. Looking forward to talking with her. She is an outstanding Niner content creator, and we've hooked up before on streams, and I always love her perspective. And I've talked to a lot of different people this summer, but I just realized the other day that I had not checked in with Steph at all this summer. And I thought, you know what, let's do this. So I sent her a text this afternoon after practice. And I said, hey, I don't know if you're, you can join me tonight, but I would love it. It would be awesome if you could join me. She said, absolutely. How about tonight at 6:30? So Steph Sanchez, who, I think she does a really nice job. I lean on her quite a bit in the off season because she puts together a list of who the Niners have met with, and it's so comprehensive, and I love the fact that she put so much work into it. And then she'll put it out on her social media, and, guys like me in the middle of the off season looking to make, potentially a video about something that is actually pertinent to your Niners so that we have something to talk about. And she will, somehow she'll get this information that, hey, you know what? They met with this guy at this event, this guy at the combine, these guys in individual workouts, and then she'll post it as part of a database. And we've done very successful videos off of it because 49er fans want to know who are the Niners talking to. Yeah, we all, does it mean they're going to draft those guys? Not necessarily. Does it mean that they like those players? Not necessarily. But as a Niner fan in the offseason looking for nuggets of news, does it satisfy us for temporarily? I would say yes, and I think she does a really nice job. So anyway, Steph Sanchez is going to be by at 6:30. She's a great follow on X at Steph49K. So I want all you guys to give her a follow on X as well as her YouTube channel, and she'll join us at bottom of the hour. So I'm looking fired up about that. So we'll talk a little Niners with Steph Sanchez, bottom of the hour. So today, let's talk about today as people are starting to file into the room. Coach Scrapper 444 says, was hoping for Steph Curry, not Steph Sanchez. Oh, man, that's rough. Mitchell and Ness with this one. I have a bad feeling about the D-line stopping the run, especially the defensive tackles. All right, we're going to get into that. We'll definitely get into that because that's a big part of Sunday. Can the Niners stop Seattle's run? In fact, why don't we start right there? I'm glad Mitchell and Ness kind of went there because I literally have 20 things to talk about tonight. And number one on the list is that, it just shows how on it he is. Can the Niners stop the Seahawk run game with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet? It's been a major point of emphasis for the Seahawks this entire year, this entire summer. Seattle's run game was a disaster last year. They were 28th in the NFL in rush offense in 2024. Nobody ran less. Nobody ran more ineffectively. Nobody ran fewer times. Nobody ran less than the Seahawks and got less for it. 28th rush offense. So they bring in Kubiak to be the offensive coordinator, and man, this summer they have rushed for over 5 yards a carry in all 3 preseason games, and not just 5 yards a carry. I mean, one of those games was close to 6 yards a carry. So can the Niners stop Kenneth Walker? Can they stop Zach Charbonnet? There was a third back, by the way, the Seahawks had this summer, who had a really good summer, but did not make the roster, I don't believe. Let me double check that. Yeah, they had a good running back. One of the best undrafted players, I think, this summer was their backup running back. So they also got a nice little run out of George Holani. George Holani, I think he played at, was it BYU or Boise? And maybe Boise. He's a Boise guy. Yeah. Holani, 5'10", 210-pound former Boise running back. But if we check their practice squad down here, who was the running back? Jacardia Wright had a really good preseason. Didn't make the team, but he's from Missouri State. Niner fans in the chat, can you, well, I shouldn't say that. I don't think, maybe Delaney Walker did not go to Missouri State. He might have went to Central Missouri. Where did Delaney Walker go? Did he go to Missouri State? Somebody has that information. Dusty Gold says, hey, Lair, what's going on? Mitchell and Ness, Niners needed the rookie defensive players to stay healthy through training camp and get preseason gameplay, and the opposite happened. I don't know that they needed preseason gameplay. I just think that you need all your players to be healthy, and they were dinged up. But we'll see. The bottom line is I don't get too exercised when rookies get hurt, or especially early in the year. Why? Because they, if you go chart it across the many years, rookies are more likely to give you half a season than a full season. I don't think you can ask for a full season out of a rookie. You got one last year out of Dom Pooney, but most of these guys give you half a season. They either start fast and peter out, start fast and get injured, or they start slow. They're on the bench and they work up to it and they get a little run later in the year. But they usually don't give you, if you show me the rookie, like the Rams last year, got a full year out of Fisk and a full year out of Verse, or their rookie years. They got full years out of those guys. They look great. So that's the exception, not the rule. You don't typically do that. You typically get about a half a year. So it doesn't bother me that the Niner guys didn't get that much run. Maybe that means they'll just be fresher later on. I do want to share the screen, though, because we were down in Santa Clara today, had a chance to talk to Kyle Shanahan, and my son Kev put a couple of my questions and answers up there on the screen. We'll start with this one. I asked him about Gus Bradley.
Has been a stud. Never got a chance to work with him.
Hold on. Don't jump ahead, Kyle. Wait until we set this all up for you. Anyway, I asked him about Gus Bradley, and I really like Gus Bradley, man. I think Gus Bradley was a major get by the Niners. This guy was the Legion of Boom. This was the guy who coached up Thomas and Chancellor and Browner and Sherman, and that they were awesome. And Gus is a really, you don't get to be an NFL head coach as a defensive guy unless you really have a scheme that works and you're really popular with the players. So I asked Shanahan a little bit about Gus. I see Gus out there. They don't make him available that much to us. When they do, I usually run right up to him and talk to him because he's a great vibe, man. And Shanahan kind of echoed that with his comments here.
What's the impact of Gus Bradley so far? He's obviously a former NFL head coach. What has he added to your staff?
Gus has been a stud. Never got a chance to work with him until this year. And he's probably like the most upbeat guy on our staff. Love having him around. He's a great guy to hang out with Saleh a ton. Saleh, I would say Gus mentored Saleh early in his career, especially at Jacksonville and stuff. And then they've been separate for a while. So now for them to get back together after they started together, they see it a lot different, but they're always from the same foundation. And to have someone like that to bounce ideas off of, and where he went to and where Saleh's gone to, I think is really cool for Saleh to have. And just for our building to have, like, Gus is talking to everybody. It's not just the defense. You see random people in his room all the time. He's cares a lot about people. He's a really easy guy to talk to, and he kind of has that relationship with really everybody in our building, and he's done it real fast.
Sometimes Kyle will give short answers, but man, he's given me some really great ones through the years, and I appreciate it, man. I mean, that's a minute-long answer of substance there. There's some really good stuff in that answer. I mean, he's talking about how he's real positive and how he's good for Saleh, and it sounds like Saleh needs to have somebody that he can kind of, commiserate with and share thoughts with, and not that he couldn't with Johnny Holland or Chris Kasarik or Bullocks or any of the other defensive coaches or staff. I'm sure he talks to everybody, but it's nice to have somebody who's, I mean, Gus, I mean, I talked to Demo about it in the locker room today. I mean, Gus designed the defense pretty much that they run. He, in a lot of ways, he's kind of the architect. So it's really cool. Like if you're sitting there and you're having problems with a building, it's really nice to have the architect sitting right there. And anybody who has any kind of construction management, background could speak to that probably. Larry Nibby, if you're watching, I'm talking to you, but no, I'm joking, of course. But, to me, to have the architect there of the defense that you're running just gives Saleh, I'm sure, a real peace of mind and a guy that he can bounce stuff off of. And Gus Bradley's a very high energy guy, and he's a presence. And the players, that's the thing. The players know. They know you can't fool the players. They know if you're bullshit. They know if you don't have any game as a player, as a coach. And when you have tremendous game as a player or a coach, you get that respect. And Gus has that respect of the players. And I'm really happy that he's here. Some people view him as Robert Saleh insurance. And maybe there's some truth in that, right? By the way, the 49ers also today waived Tanner Mordecai off of IR. So kind of sets up for Gus Bradley's son to potentially Carter Bradley to be another quarterback on the practice squad. We'll see. The 49ers right now, have a third quarterback on the practice squad, the former Nebraska Cornhusker, Adrian Martinez. I talked to Adrian today in the locker room, so we'll put that out on at least some of that out later today. But yeah, I thought that was a great answer by Shanahan. I mean, just that fact that Gus is so positive and such a positive contributor already. So that was the first question, I believe, I asked Shanahan. Then I asked him also another one. I asked him about the Seattle's run game. If to me, once again, as Mitchell and Ness, jumped in with the first question. I mean, to me, it's like that's the big issue: is can the Niners stop Seattle's run game? And that's going to be a big question. I mean, can they stop Seattle's run game? Seattle has run the ball successfully this summer. To me, it's like if whoever, I've seen a couple people break this game down. Hey, whoever runs it better is going to win the game. Well, Seattle is running it better this summer than the 49ers are running it in the preseason. How much does that matter? Does it matter at all? We're going to find out in a couple days here. But I asked Shanahan today that question. I said, what do you watch? I know you watch, defense for the most part because he's an offensive guy, but he's the head coach. So he watches everything. And here's what he had to say about Seattle's run game.
I know you don't watch a lot of offensive film maybe, but they didn't run it well last year, Seattle, but they've run it really well this summer. Have you peeked at their run game? Is there anything noticeable?
Yeah, it's a different style run game. I mean, it's very similar to ours and the stuff that they do. I mean, just being with Clint and being with John Benton for a long time is one of the best line coaches there is. They all, I worked with those guys back in Houston. John was here for a number of times. Clint was here 2 years ago. So there's lots of similarities in what they do. And they ran it well in the preseason. And we'll see how it is week one.
Yeah.
I know you don't.
They did really run it well in the preseason. I mean, I was looking at some of the numbers. They ran for like 268 against the Chiefs. Now, granted, it's preseason. I don't, it's hard to know how much credence to put into the preseason period. But to me, that it really starts right there. I mean, if the 49ers get gashed against the run, man, that's going to be so deflating. Why? Because the Niners devoted so much of the offseason and so much of their draft capital to getting guys who could stop the run, getting a better defensive line that could stop the run, drafting Nick Martin, drafting Upton Stout, adding Pinnock, he's a great run blitzer. He's really good around the line of scrimmage. He's a very smart football player. All these guys it was all with the purpose of being better against the run. And if all of a sudden Seattle just gashes the Niners and they run the ball up and down the field, that is going to be really, really tough to stomach. It's going to be very deflating to the 49ers. So I think that is going to be the game plan for Seattle. I mean, they'll mix in some balance because they've got Cooper Kupp, they got Jackson Smith, the Jigba. They've got some decent passing weapons but I just see Darnold as a guy who I think they're going to try to commit to the run game, try to run it effectively, and let Darnold make, a few passes, 10 to 15 passes, nothing crazy. I'd be very surprised if Darnold was like 25 or 30 passes. I think they're going to try to run it 60% of the time. I think they think they're going to be able to run it on the Niners. The Niners have practiced some 5-man fronts. So if they're getting gashed in the wide 9, they may go to a 5-man defensive alignment up front, kind of a 5-2-4, a 5-2-4 look, and take one of the linebackers and put him on the line of scrimmage, basically. But use a bigger bodied guy. Go 3 down linemen and Bosa and Huff off the edges, and that 5-man surface. I think you may see that if the Niners in any way struggle to stop the run. All right, let's talk about some other things. We always usually start Niners Nightly with what happened today in Ninerland. There were a number of interesting things to talk about before that I want to play this Joe Montana cut as well. But to me, there was so many interesting topics today when I was gathering information for the show and down in 49er practice and so many different topics. Now, I think it's interesting. The big question that everybody has is, can the Niners rebound from last year's 6-11 campaign? They missed the playoffs last year for the first time since 2020. Shanahan, with the Niners, is 70-62 with 4 double-digit win seasons. He's got 4 NFC Championship game appearances, 2 Super Bowl berths, but 0 rings. And I think the people that are really very positive that the Niners can turn it around this year are pointing to the schedule being very favorable. The Niners played last year, of their 17 games, 10 of them were against teams that won 10 games or more. I mean, that's unfreaking believable. This year, it's the total opposite. They have just 4 games against teams that were playoff teams a year ago. So, they play Tampa. They're pretty good. They play Houston. They're pretty good. They play the Rams twice. They're pretty good. So you got 4 games against some pretty good teams. The rest of the games are, they should win. They should win these games. But everybody, anybody can beat anybody in the NFL. And that's just kind of the bottom line. When you look at last year's 49ers and you do the autopsy, the offense was okay. The special teams was freaking horrid, absolutely horrid, which is why there's a new special teams coordinator. But the other thing that really jumped out when you looked at last year's autopsy on the season, 49ers were 8th in total defense, but they were 27th in points per game allowed. They were a top 10 defense in yards. They were nearly the worst team in football as far as points allowed. So you can blame Sorensen if you want. But the Niners were not good in the red zone. They weren't good in the red zone offensively, and they weren't good in the red zone defensively. And, if you want to say what's the number one thing that has to reverse itself from last year to this year, yeah, the injuries, but it's the red zone. The Niners have to be better in the red zone offensively, and I'm sure they'll point to Christian McCaffrey being back as a reason to believe they can be. But defensively, they were a disaster in the red zone last year. Miscommunications, breakdowns. How many times did I have to hear Nick Sorensen give me that blank look and say communication breakdown? I was going to have a nervous breakdown if he asked me, if he gave me that same pathetic answer another week. He literally threw that answer at me like 4 times. Yeah, just communication breakdown. Well, here's not a communication breakdown. He's gone, right? He got that message. He's out. So now Robert Saleh is in, and we'll see if they can be better on the defensive side of the ball in the red zone. The other thing I think is really interesting, it has to be brought up when you're playing Seattle, is look at how much difference the quarterbacks have made. When the Seahawks had Russell Wilson, they dominated the Niners. But now that the Niners have Brock Purdy, they dominate the Seahawks, and the script is flipped. Russell Wilson went 17-4 in 21 starts against the 49ers. 17-4. He dominated them. Brock Purdy, is 3-0 in Seattle, and I think 5-1 against Seattle overall. You'd have to double check that. I think 5-1. But last year, I mean, in his career in Seattle, 3-0, averaging 227 yards passing per game in those games with 6 touchdowns and only 1 interception. And that's probably the key right there. He doesn't turn it over in Seattle. And when he doesn't turn it over, he tends to win. The Seahawks, by the way, used to be this incredible, awesome home team. The Niners, according to the stats, according to the fan sites and the ticket sites, are going to have 53% of the crowd at Lumen Field, where, by the way, Seattle is no longer all that great. They went 3-6 at home last year. They went 7-1 on the road, including beating the Niners at Levi's. So the Niners have won 3 in a row in Seattle. And if they win on Sunday, it will be 4 in a row in the series on the road. And that is the record. The Niners have never won 4 in a row on the road against Seattle in this head-to-head series. Overall, the Niners are 5-1 in the last 6 against Seattle. So the Seattle has brought out the best in the 49ers. Couple other interesting notes today. The Niners, I had mentioned before, waived quarterback Tanner Mordecai with an injury settlement, so now he's free to go find somewhere else to play. But I'll say this. I think this guy got a little short shrift, to be honest. I mean, look at how he played and look at what he got for how he played. Look at how he played. Look at how Carter Bradley played. And then Mordecai's gone and Bradley's still there. You got Adrian Martinez on the practice squad. I don't know. I'm a big Mordecai fan. It's not that I think he's that special, but I thought he played pretty well this summer. I got to be honest. Thought he played pretty well. Who knows? Maybe he'll be back for another tenure, but the guy can run. He's got a pretty good arm. He throws kind of a flat ball. I don't think he's a world beater, but I think he's a good backup NFL quarterback. I was looking at some odds today on the defensive rookie of the year odds, and Abdul Carter is favored to win that defensive rookie of the year award. But guess who's the second choice? Mikael Williams of the Niners, 7-1 to win the defensive rookie of the year. The third choice is a combo of Travis Hunter and Jalen Walker. I'd probably go with Travis Hunter. Hunter's just that special. He seems like almost like a once-in-a-lifetime kind of a player. By the way, if the Niners do win in week 1, that'll be the third year in a row they've won in week 1. They've won the last 2 week 1s. On the other side is Mike McDonald, who was the former Ravens coordinator. He went 1-1 against the Niners last year, 11th year as a coach in the NFL, second as a head coach, 10-7 in year 1. Wasn't bad. There's nothing to sneeze at there. 10-win season in your first year, and were thought to be kind of a rebuilding team. Now they trade out Geno for Darnold, and we'll see if that helps them. The Niners at receiver, I think, are interesting. And, I was listening a little bit to Willard, and I probably shouldn't say that since I'm on the KMBR YouTube live stream, but I did hear my buddy Willard, our good friend Mark Willard, talking about, who's going to be the Niners' number 1 receiver. And I'd love to throw that out to you guys in the chat. If I said to you, who's going to be the Niners' best receiver this year? Who is that going to be? Is it going to be Kittle? Is it going to be CMC? Or is it going to be one of these receivers? Is it going to be Ayuk, and he's going to get healthy? Is it going to be JJ? Is it going to be Pearsall? Is it going to be Watkins? Is it going to be Cowing, the speedsters? I kind of think it might be Demarcus Robinson. I think Demarcus Robinson might quietly get in there. But the Niners today released Russell Gage from the active roster, but still intend to sign him back to the practice squad and activate him for week 1. I got to be honest, I don't understand all the roster gymnastics here at receiver. The Niners also promoted Marquez Valdez-Scantling from the practice squad to the active roster. If this could potentially be about money or something, I don't know. Kyle was asked this, he kind of dodged. I asked 4 or 5 people in the room, what do you make of this wide receiver, pivot, tap dance and all that? And we're like, we don't really know. It is worth noting, and I'm going to ask Steph about this. The Niners made a formal offer to Kendrick Bourne. So Kendrick Bourne announced late this afternoon that he is going to sit out week 1, but that he will weigh his potential options over the weekend. So, the Niners are on the list, right? They made a formal offer. He was just here. I mean, it wasn't like he didn't come to San Francisco or Santa Clara. He did. I don't know how he looked. I don't know what they think of him. He's a veteran. He had an ACL surgery in 2023. I don't think he's the same player since, but who knows? We haven't seen a lot of him. And he's going to weigh his options. I hate to say this, but I mean, deep down, he's probably hoping somebody gets hurt. Now, obviously, that's bad karma, but that's in nature of the game in the NFL. If you're on the bubble, if some, a couple receivers get hurt on the right teams or wrong teams, whichever way you want to look at it, Kendrick Bourne could get a phone call and he might actually get some real cash out of it. If not, he's going to have to accept one of the probably underwhelming offers he's gotten, probably from the Niners and the Commanders, and who knows, maybe a third team in there as well. A couple other 49er notes. Rich Eisen and Steve Mariucci on the NFL Network, they were on a panel with 4 people. Kurt Warner was on there as well. Kurt Warner picked the Niners to win the division. Eisen and Mooch both picked the Rams. So if you see Mooch in the South Bay, make sure you sound him out. He's picking the Rams to win the NFC West. The Niners, by the way, will start this season with the NFL's oldest offensive line. And it's kind of odd because it's like, wow, Trent's old. He's 37. Brendel's 32. But I mean, the rest of those guys are not old. Pooney's 25. Barch is 27. McKivitz is 29. And 32 doesn't seem that old. That means there's a lot of really young offensive lines, or maybe Trent just skews it. But yeah, Niners oldest offensive line in the league. Today, no Yatir Gross-Matos, no Jordan Watkins. The Watkins was not a surprise, but the Gross-Matos was. They've been trying to get him out there, and they've been gearing up. He hasn't played at all this summer, and yet they kept him on the roster. They gave him a spot. They risked losing Valdez. I mean, and now here he is. It's week 1. He can't go. So I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. I know, Lynch wants to kind of force this square peg into the round hole with Yatir Gross-Matos. At some point, you're going to have to look up and say, hey, man, it ain't working. I mean, the guy hasn't done anything. He rarely, if ever, gets on the field. When he does get on the field, he's done some decent things, but he doesn't get on the field with any consistency. So also limited today were Juwan Jennings, Dom Pooney, and Jordan James, but Shanahan said that he thinks Pooney's going to go. Niners named their captains today. There are 8 of them. Purdy, CMC, Kittle, Trent, Bosa, Fred, Juice, and Demo Lenore. Demo replaces Debo as the 49ers captain this year. So 8 captains, and Demo's the new one. We asked him about it at his locker. He's fired up. He's in a great mood right now. I said, hey, man, what's it like playing outside? And he's like, it's different out there. He's not as much involved in the run game, but he's on the island. So he definitely feels that pressure, and we'll see how he plays out there. Shanahan was asked to divulge who the starting safeties are going to be this weekend. He would not, but later on in the presser, he said he loved Jair Brown. I would imagine it's Pinnock and Brown. That would be my guess. Kyle did say MVS and Russell Gage both have a chance to be active on Sunday. The Niners practiced the silent count this week with the loud environment. Obviously, that's going to be a factor. Kyle, we played you the cut on the Seattle run game. He says that Seattle's run game is very similar to the Niners run game, and it's a totally different run game than they had a year ago. That'll be interesting to see if Seattle's mastered it. They had a great preseason run on the ball. Couple other thoughts. I want to play you. Well, we'll play this later on, maybe. But Joe Montana stopped by on a show and had some interesting comments about Brock Purdy. And, anytime Joe talks, it's like, hey, man, I always want to listen to Joe. Oh, by the way, I saw this. I don't know if you guys saw this. Dre Greenlaw sidelined with a quad strain, didn't practice again today. His status for week 1 in doubt. Man, I wanted the Niners to bring back Dre, but I'm glad they didn't listen to me, because it was all with my heart, not with my head. And you can't make football personnel decisions with your heart. All right, Steph Sanchez is in the green room, but I do, and so she's probably snacking on all that KMBR has to offer back there. But here, before we go to her, let's play the Joe thing, and then we'll go to her and get her thoughts as well on week 1 in the NFL. Really fired up to have her on the show. Here's Joe, though. I'm going to share the screen on Joe, and you can hear Joe, what he had to say about Purdy today. Anytime Joe talks, it's like, we all got to listen. I mean, maybe it's just me. I'm old school in this way, but Joe doesn't talk a lot. He really doesn't. Anytime Joe or Steve talk, it's like must hear. So here's Joe with McAfee. A little bit of Joe.
What do you think about this season? It feels like Christian McCaffrey back healthy is a much better place to be than where we were literally 1 year ago when we just learned. I don't know how much you knew before everybody else. When we find out that Christian McCaffrey has the word Achilles involved in anything, we obviously immediately worried. It was tendonitis. He basically missed all year. We found out like 3 days before the season started. That kind of dampened everything, and I think the season went bah, 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 bah. This year feels like could be a bounce back year for the Niners in a big way. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they definitely have the team to be able to go in and compete with anybody. Obviously with Christian coming back is a huge plus to that offense, takes a lot of pressure off the quarterback. I think he got a little feeling the pressure where he felt like he had to do and contribute more instead of just going and, doing what he'd done for his whole life and just be yourself. And we always have that tendency that we want to make the change and make it quick. And now we got to make something happen. And so I think he just got caught up in that, and I think you'll see a different player coming up this year.
You like Brock Purdy a lot, Joe? How have you got the chance to talk to him? It feels like you guys have similar mindsets. I'm not 100% sure if you feel that way, but he seems to be ultra competitive and very cool, which obviously you have similar traits.
Yeah, I mean, I really like him. He usually doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and he's careful with the football. He's got great placement of it, as you can see here. And I just think he's got the right demeanor. And, everybody has those kind of years. I had him. Everyone, you can go to and look around at anybody, Brady, everybody, when injuries start taking place, your whole team changes. And then the quarterback seems sometimes that it's all rides on their back that they sometimes believe. And so they start doing things they wouldn't normally do. But I think he'll be fine.
What do you think about this?
There you go. A little Joe Montana on the Pat McAfee show, and it's always great to see Joe. Let's welcome in our guest tonight. Steph Sanchez does a great job covering the 49ers, and she's with us here on KMBR. Steph, thanks for jumping in, and we appreciate you. I was saying off the start of the show that I really used your database so much in the offseason when I was trying to figure out, and who do the Niners like? And I really appreciate that. I know lots of Niner content creators did appreciate that as well. But I'll throw to you the question that McAfee just threw to Joe. Just what do you think of the Niners?
I mean, with all the changes that happened this offseason, I do expect there's going to be some bumps in the road for them, particularly early in the season. But I was at training camp and watching the defense. I saw the improvements right away. As far as run defense goes, I think right away we did see some of the exotic looks that I think Robert Saleh is going to be deploying with that defensive line. You're going to get, I think, a lot of versatility in what these guys can do, mixing things up a little bit. Different types of blitzes and things like that. Chase Lucas, I can imagine getting in the mix there. I think it's not that difficult to be better than they were last year, right? And so I think even with Robert Saleh coming back, I think that's going to be a huge difference. And they got a lot of rookies who are going to be playing, so I hope those guys are ready for it. It really, like much of their season success, I think hinges on how quickly these young players can come along. We know these foundational guys are going to be ready for the challenge. I feel like they're all refreshed, the long off season that they had, but how quickly can these young guys get back or get into the swing of an NFL season?
I don't want to pile on Sorensen, and he's not here to defend himself. But I just kind of feel like he didn't have the answers. It's like he just didn't have the answers. Not that he should have had the answers or that, but I get the feeling watching Robert Saleh, and you kind of referenced it a little bit with the kind of what we saw in the preseason. You saw some Chase Lucas blitzing. You saw some exotics. They're playing some games up front. They practiced those in these preseason games. So I don't know. I just felt like last year they're just I felt like Nick did not have the answers. I don't think he had the personnel, in fairness. I don't know if Devondre Campbell was forced upon him or if he chose him, but it was obvious to me early on that Campbell had lost a clear step and a half. That Arizona game where Murray kind of ran around the side and he had an angle on him and he never even touched him. And Murray ran for 50 yards. That was like the first indicator, but then the terrible run that cost the Niners the Seahawks game when Geno got loose. Campbell, Steph, had a 10-yard down the field advantage on Geno, and he never got a finger on him as Geno ran figure eights around him. So I hate to put it all on Campbell and Sorensen, but I do feel a lot more confident that if the Niners get into a situation where their front four is not getting heat, that Saleh will be able to dial it up, and he'll be willing to dial it up. He'll be eager to dial it up. And I think we'll see a lot more creative pressure packages up front if they can't get it done with their front four.
Yeah, and I could see them getting it done with the front four, especially on base downs. Like, run defense is going to be so much better this year. And like I said, I think that's something that I saw right out of the gate watching training camp. So to me, that's a good development. You see guys like Upton Stout, who just has like a nose for the football. He's all in there in run support, and you love to see that. We already know Demo's good at that. So I'm just excited about what these guys can bring on the back end as well to support the run defense. I think that's going to be much improved. And, on the offensive side, there's no excuses for the offense to not look better. I mean, you have a ton of guys coming back and guys who your offense kind of revolves around. Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, those guys not being available were, I think, huge, obviously, for the 49ers last year. I think it was hard for Kyle Shanahan to adjust without those guys in there. It's just too much of a burden for everyone else to try to carry what they're missing with those guys. So I think with those guys coming back and Christian McCaffrey presumably healthy, as we keep hearing, right, I think it's going to be a major change for the offense in a positive way. And I think Brock Purdy is going to feel more comfortable with his supporting cast back out there again. The chemistry that he has with Ricky Pearsall, excited for that. I think we're going to see George Kittle get more targets this year. We've been waiting for that, right? So yeah, I think it's going to be a display of this offense getting back on track.
I really think you hit on the right one there with Kittle too. I don't know if it's just because it's like, I really think that chemistry seems better. Now, is it that I know they live in the same neighborhood, or does it actually look better? And I kind of think like in that Denver day where they practiced against them, Denver's defense was so good early in that practice, and there was no room. The Niners couldn't do anything. They couldn't run. They couldn't pass. But the one pass that Purdy did complete was the bootleg pass to Kittle, who dove through a sea of arms, and they completed the pass. And I just thought to myself, wow, this has been clicking all summer, and they barely completed it here against Denver, but they did complete it. So I do think Kittle could have a monstrous year. I want to share the screen and talk about Mike Macdonald's defense, because McDonald's really stymied the Niners on Christmas night with the Ravens, a couple years ago. And it was kind of an emotional defeat, Steph. I mean, it really was. It felt like he was reading Brock's mail. It felt like he was, they had a great game plan. And I mean, it was more involved than this, but basically they took advantage of the fact that Shanahan used a lot of condensed formations. They blitzed the slot player off of the condensed formation, so he's standing really, really close to the line of scrimmage. They could camouflage it to the last second because of the condensed formation, and then they would drop extra defenders, and Ravens have a bunch of great defenders, including Kyle Hamilton, into the middle of the field, and then just everybody got a little deeper, and you could see they weren't even playing anything other than just reading Brock's eyes. And they picked him off 3 times. A couple of them were a little funky. One was a tip pass and all. What do you think of this defense that I put on the screen here, this Seattle defense? He didn't have the linebackers that he wanted at the beginning of the year last year, but then he brought in Ernest Jones, and they changed it up. Tyrese Knight started to kind of elevate. They also added Chaz Surratt, by the way, who may be throwing a little intel their way. But Steph, what do you think of this Seahawk defense? A lot of people are saying that they're really going to be, that they're very strong in the front with Byron Murphy and Jaron Reed. They added DeMarcus Lawrence off the edge. You got big Leonard Williams, who's always been a really good player. How do you see this defense?
Well, Larry, there's a reason that when Mike McDonald got hired by Seattle, I was like, this is the worst case scenario for the 49ers. And, I think we knew that first year we weren't going to see this true Mike McDonald defense manifest itself because he wasn't going to have all of the players that he would want, right? I mean, you got to work with what you have. You could bring in some guys, but it's going to take some time, right? And as you said, what he had with the Ravens, the personnel, you're not going to have that in Seattle right away. And that was a great personnel group that he had, with the Ravens. So I think in the second year, he's a little bit closer to making it happen with this group. And the biggest challenge of all, I think, is just the scheme, because that's what, historically has made Brock Purdy struggle more so. At times, there's Kyle Shanahan doesn't seem to have the answers to certain defensive coordinators. And I would put Mike McDonald's, performance, if you could call it that, against the 49ers on that Christmas game up there with some of those. So, yeah, I think this week 1 game, though, going up against Seattle, I like that it's in week 1 because I still think with some of these new pieces that they have as well, it might not be clicking all the way, yet in this week 1 game. So they play them again in week 18. That could be another story.
Yeah.
They could have things clicking then. And it could look closer to maybe what he had with the Ravens. But I think right now you are going to see some things that maybe trip up Brock Purdy, that maybe trip up, Kyle Shanahan. And maybe it won't look quite as comfortable as it did, in some of the other games Brock has had, because he's had a lot of success against Seattle. But I do think there's going to be a turning of the tide at some point, and it could be coming later this season. But I'm going to say that in week 1, the 49ers will still have the upper hand here.
I think so too. I mean, Brock's never lost in Seattle. It's interesting. I was looking at and I was mentioning this at the start of the hour, how, for years, the Niners just got owned by Russell Wilson. He was 17-4 against the Niners. And it just always felt like he had all the answers. And it seemed like almost one time a game, Steph, he would hold the ball for like 10 seconds, 12 seconds and break down the entire defense. And it's like, and he was just so reliable in the fourth quarter. And I just kind of felt like that one Seattle game where Brock slid forward and he was on the sideline. He kind of extended the ball to get that first down. That was very Russell-esque. And I don't know, people compare Brock to Drew Brees, and I've heard a bunch of different comparisons. I think he reminds me a lot of Russell Wilson. And I just think it's interesting how Russell owned the Niners. Now Purdy is here, and Purdy seems to own Seattle. At least he's 4-1 or 5-1 or something like that against them. He's 3-0 up there. Do you see any Russell with Purdy, or is there a comp that you prefer?
Well, I could see some of it. Like, I definitely think he has some of the athleticism that's there, but always prefers to throw. It's kind of a last resort that he'll use his legs, but he could surprise you with it. I think Russell Wilson probably has the better deep ball with the moon ball that he has, but I think that's a part of Brock Purdy's game that has just gotten better. And I think even in camp, I was seeing him let it loose further downfield this season. So I could see that being a theme this year as well with Brock. So yeah, I could see some of it in his game. I know, sometimes he gets the comparisons to Drew Brees and whatnot, but I think maybe that's more so just how they carry themselves on the field. But Brock is Brock. I mean, it's kind of hard to compare to anyone else too, but I do love the sense of dominance against this Seattle team as well, because, we've been waiting for a quarterback who can not just beat Seattle, but beat them consistently, because we were getting, our butts handed to us by them for quite some time. So it's nice to see the roles reversed finally. And so Brock Purdy has been the reason for that. And he's been the game changer. So yeah, I appreciate just some of the, here and there that we get of Brock and, how he compares to other quarterbacks. But at the end of the day, I appreciate him being who he is.
Are you surprised? And I know you're, been covering the Niners for a number of years, so you're a perfect person to ask about this. You've kind of seen the whole evolution of how he arrived, and we all know the narrative and now where he's at, the contract extension, the Super Bowl appearance. But are you surprised that he was as polarizing as he was? Because, like, if you're around him, he doesn't seem at all like a controversial guy, and he definitely doesn't try to be polarizing. He definitely tried to diffuse at every turn. Are you surprised though that he was a polarizing figure? And as far as you yourself, I mean, were you in his camp early, or did he have to win you over? I mean, some people are like, hey man, I just didn't see it. I was all in on Trey Lance, and I really didn't see it. And now I do. But where were you on Purdy, and do you understand why he was so polarizing?
So, Larry, I definitely wasn't early on Brock Purdy. I can't take that credit. I know, you were a fan of his even in that first training camp that he had, and I just couldn't see the vision because, and I was at that training camp and seeing him, I just felt like he threw a lot of picks, and that's all I remember. Like, you don't, as the third string quarterback, you don't get a lot of opportunity in those training camp practices. You maybe get a few snaps here and there, but the lasting image was him throwing picks. But what I do remember in hindsight now, I do remember players saying we love that he's aggressive. And, now we see that, right? He is aggressive, and I think he tries things in practice, and maybe that's something that they appreciated. And obviously the demeanor that you get from him that obviously I wasn't getting up close is something that strikes people right away when you see Brock Purdy. He has this commanding presence to him, right? That I think makes you pay attention. And for a player who was this close to being a UDFA, right? That's very striking for anyone. So I think that's kind of what drew people to him. And, just the natural leadership that he has, I think is what surprised a lot of people. It surprised me. And Larry, I was at that game where he took over against the Dolphins. And so I was blown away. I was really nervous about how that game was going to go. I thought Jimmy was having a pretty good game at the start of it. And it was a pretty close one too. And against, McDonald, I thought that was going to be a pretty close match. So having Brock come in, I was very nervous about it. And he took the wheel, and we never looked back. He looks better than, even Jimmy Garoppolo did. And it was just the fact that he was able to sustain that, I think, for how long as he has, that, he's not a fluke. I think that became clear really quickly with Brock. So he didn't really have to win me over too much after that. The following game was the one against the Bucks. That
35-7 or whatever.
That was a great game as well. So just the poise that he plays with, those are the things that I think we were missing, and he just feels like the total package.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's a perfect quarterback, but you know what? I think he's a pretty good quarterback. I'll say the moment that I was like, whoa, I didn't realize that was because he seems like such a nice guy. And I don't know. It just seems Ray McLeod told me a couple years ago, he's like, man, I ran the wrong route. And this guy, and he was, I don't even think I was recording with him. I think I was just talking to him in his locker. He's like, this guy jumped my shit. And he was like, he was in my face. And I'm like, did it piss you off? He's like, no, man. He's like, he was good. It was good. It told me that this guy was the right guy for the job, because you got to be the tough guy as the quarterback, man. You got to get all 11 guys to do what you need them to do and to be where they need to be if they're receivers. And, Ray was like, hey, right then I knew he had it. And the way he said it too was just very, very, a lot of conviction. According to the numbers, Steph, and I don't know how they get these numbers, and maybe they're accurate, maybe they're not, but I saw Lombardi put it out. I saw Nick Wagner put it out. 53% of the estimated crowd at Lumen Field is supposed to be Niner fans. Now, you cover the Niners from outside the Bay, And so you travel sometimes to games and are traveling and see the 49ers in their road environment. How surprised are you that could be the reality? I mean, do you believe it? Do you believe that over half the crowd's going to be in Seattle, are going to be in week 1, are going to be all those tickets are bought up by Niner fans? Is that possible?
I think it is. Yeah, I think we will see it. I mean, this fan base travels, and they travel really well. They have for quite some time. And I think more so in Seattle, in just knowing, because I think for a long time, 49er fans were maybe afraid to go to those games. And not because of the fans in Seattle, but more so we don't want to see our team
the results.
lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we don't want to get embarrassed. But now, again, with the turning of the tide and feeling like, hey, like we've won the last few games against Seattle and feeling confident about that. I think teams or fans want to show up for those games now. And we've been hearing too, that's a great stadium to visit, so why not, if you feel like your team is going to win, why not make it out there? And I'm sure there's a lot of 49er fans up in the Pacific Northwest, close by as well. So, and I'm actually going to New Orleans in week 2. So
I am too. Me and Kev, we're headed to New Orleans as well. So we'll see you there.
We love to travel for these games.
I mean, it's fun. I mean, I want to go. We're going to go see LSU in Florida on Saturday night, and then come back for the Niner game. But what about receiver? I mean, the Niners have been playing this tap dance with Russell Gage and MVS with the roster spots. And then they brought in Kendrick Bourne. There was nothing said about it. Then later today, it came out that Bourne says he's going to sit out this week and he's going to weigh his options this weekend. This comes on the tail end of a report yesterday by Mayoko saying that the Niners have indeed made a formal offer to Bourne. So I don't know. I mean, I'm there watching practice. MVS a little taller. He's a little faster. Gage looks like maybe he's got a little bit better ball skills, a little bit more reliable. Haven't seen Bourne, obviously, in a while, and he had the torn ACL last year, or 2 years ago, I guess it was. How do you evaluate those three guys? I mean, should the Niners go after Bourne? Do you want to see him pick the 49ers? And how do you feel about how does he compare in your mind to MVS or Gage or Chosen? Among their veteran options?
Well, I think with the return and the timely return of Juwan Jennings on Monday, I think it did kind of alleviate my concerns about the position for the next couple weeks. Now, I still think you have something to figure out for week 1 because, as Kyle Shanahan suggested, Juwan Jennings is not going to play every snap, right? So I think you still need some answers there. Is Kendrick Bourne really the answer, though? I don't know at this point. Even if they sign him, he's not going to be playing week 1, if any at all, even if he did sign, right? So I think I don't really care if Kendrick Bourne signs with 49ers or not. Now that Jennings is back, I think they could make do without him because, I mean, there's a lot of overlap between Juwan Jennings and a Kendrick Bourne. And also the fact that he did tryouts, Kendrick Bourne, with both the 49ers and the Commanders, and he didn't immediately sign with either of those teams, tell me that maybe it was a pretty modest contract offer that he got from either of those teams. And also that could indicate maybe where he's at physically, right? Maybe he's just not the same player that he was before his injury, and before the time off that he had. So I just don't think the 49ers should feel pressed to bring in a Kendrick Bourne. I do like Russell Gage a lot. I think he does bring you some of that reliability. He seemed to be a favorite target to some quarterbacks in training camp and one that was, kind of a steady Eddie for them, which, at a position that the 49ers are right now, you can never have too many of those guys, right? So I think I like Russell Gage if he's available to come up for that week 1 game. And, it seems pretty clear MVS is going to be in the mix as well. Now, he could be a deep threat, more of a decoy, right? I would say someone who can, take the top off the defense, carry a safety with them, and just open things up in the middle of the field, as we know, Kyle Shanahan loves to do. Could mean more targets for Ricky Pearsall, could mean more targets for even Christian McCaffrey. But Yeah, I think they're okay with who they have right now. I wouldn't be bending over backwards for Kendrick Bourne.
One of the interesting changes. Now, I just don't make a lot of changes. Shanahan's very, what he likes, he likes. He's going to defer to the second half. I mean, his tendencies are kind of well known at this point. But the Niners have switched it up a little bit. They're going to wear white a bunch, and this is my favorite 49er uniform right here. Now, nobody wore it better than this guy right here. Prime time. And I remember watching this. If this is the Falcon game, I remember watching him and Bad Moon Rising throwing like 25 punches at each other, and neither guy was ejected. That was back in that day. But I think this is my favorite uni of all the unis. I like the throwback whites, especially if they play at night. I think it's a really clean look. And my second favorite would probably be the white pants with the red throwbacks. But the Niners have a bunch of uniforms, including the black ones they're going to wear in Week 18. Some people love them. Some people don't. I don't love the face mask. It seems to me it should be like black. Instead, it's gold. That seems a little goofy. But whatever. It's all personal preference. Do you have a favorite 49er uniform?
I mean, these are classic, right? And it's almost a crime that they're only wearing the white throwbacks once this year, right? Because if they're going to wear more white, and I get why, right? You kind of want to combat the heat in Santa Clara early in the season, but why not choose to wear the throwbacks a little bit more during that time? I think the white primaries that they wear in away games are their worst of all the options that they have. I think the throwbacks are my favorite. And let's bring back the red bandana look with this as well. I appreciated Simon Neal, who was rocking a red bandana in training camp a couple of times. And I was like, I like that. It's very Deion Sanders coded. And I also like the red socks with the stripes as well.
I agree. You mentioned Neal, man. Neal's awesome. He is fantastic to talk to. He's like one of my favorite guys to talk to because he's all confidence. And he's got like, it's like, I said, what's your motivation like out there? What are you thinking about? He's like, man, I'm thinking about that guy's trying to take food off my kid's plate. And it's like, whoa, dude. And you're thinking of it like that. It's like, yeah, that's motivation. But I love his intensity. I love his confidence. That guy, talk about a cocky, confident player. I don't know if he's going to be great on special teams, if he's going to be good at corner or what. We'll see. But he carries himself like he's a big deal. So we'll see. I mean, I love that swagger. You got to have some guys on your team with swagger, right? I mean, swagger's a prerequisite.
I always say my DBs need to be a little delusional, because you have to, you have to have that confidence, right? You need to be a little delusional. You need to believe some things before you can have it play out on the field.
No question. Couple last ones before we finish up here. Give me your concerns. Like what's your major concern? Some people it's the O-line, some people it's the pass rush, some people it's the health, some people it's Purdy. Some people think the young defense is not going to be able to stop the run. What's 1, 2, 3, or what are your biggest concerns going into the year?
Number one is health.
Okay.
I mean,
after this summer,
every year with this team, like always the number one concern, because I think we saw how easily, it could derail the season if they have, and after the summer, yes, it could really have an impact. And hopefully the 49ers got all of their injuries out of the way. It's kind of remarkable that they're suddenly healthy before week 1 after just 2 weeks ago. We were panicking about the situation. But they do have these first 2 games, away games, right? Playing on turf. Hopefully that doesn't lead to any injuries in the first couple weeks of the season. So that'd be my number one concern with this team. If they have everyone healthy, I don't have many concerns. I think as far as the offensive line goes, I think they're average to slightly above average. And I think, a lot of 49er fans, if they see anyone make a mistake, particularly players who they have it in their mind, this player is bad, like a Jake Brendel or even a Colton McKivitz. Like Colton McKivitz didn't even have that bad of a season last year, but if he makes any mistake, it's like now, oh, of course, Colton McKivitz, right? So I think for the offensive line in 49er fans' minds, like they don't have a lot of room for error. And with Trent Williams coming back, I think it's going to be much improved. I do like what Ben Bartch showed when he was healthy. So I do feel good about that. Jake Brendel has to be better than he was last year. He just has to be. Like a lot of the success is kind of determined on his success as well as the center. He has a lot of responsibility. And so, he's someone that I'm going to be keeping a close eye on this year. And yeah, I think those would be my big concerns with the offensive line, that, Trent stays healthy and Brendel can, look closer to even the 2023 version of him where it's serviceable. That's just what we need, serviceable. I think it was interesting, Larry, that, I don't know if you saw that piece from The Athletic where, they ranked some of the offensive play callers across the league that was ranked by the defensive peers in the NFL. And Kyle Shanahan, of course, was ranked number 1. Great. But one of the things that they mentioned about Kyle Shanahan, just his shortcomings, was the protections. And that's something that could be manipulated. We've seen it be manipulated against some of the great defensive coordinators in this league, especially like the Super Bowl is the one that comes to mind, right? So I think that's something that will worry me again, if that's going to be an issue for this team, especially against, some of those really tough defensive coordinators who seem to have Kyle Shanahan's number. Is Kyle Shanahan going to adjust and maybe allow Brock Purdy to set some protections himself, right? That's something he hasn't really given him a lot of freedom to do. And is that something that we see change this year? I think the worst that could happen is you let him try, right? And
it helped Hurts.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, a lot of the Shanahan disciples have allowed their quarterbacks to set protections. Kyle Shanahan is like, he's the most stubborn of all. We know that about him. So we'll see how that goes into the season and if he's willing to, have a little more freedom around that. But I think as far as the offensive line goes, that is something that would concern me, especially in big games, right?
Last one for you. Appreciate you stopping by. If all these players were stock and you could buy stock in one player, who would you want to buy stock in? Like, basically, I guess the question is, anytime you buy stock, you want to buy low and sell high, right? So you can't say Christian McCaffrey because his stock's pretty high, right? But who on this roster stock is lower now than you think it's going to be, and you would want to buy stock in it right now?
I'm going to go with a defensive player too, because I also think on the offensive side, it's almost too easy to answer because you also have fantasy football, which is kind of like stocks as well. I am buying Ricky Pearsall on fantasy football because the value is great. But on the defensive side, I'm going to go with Marquez Siegel. And personally, I'm not buying this Jair Brown thing. I think Marquez Siegel is going to be the starter. They listed Jair Brown on the unofficial depth chart, and I'm sure maybe Kyle Shanahan doesn't have any hand in who goes on the unofficial depth chart, but he did make it clear he didn't want to reveal who that second starting safety is, right? So, maybe have a tinfoil hat on. For me, maybe it is Marquez Siegel who's going to be the starting safety. If he isn't, because I could see that scenario too. You want to go with the veteran. If he isn't, I could see Marquez Siegel, being the starting safety by week 3.
He's a really great prospect because, he's fast. He's very, very smart, and he loves to thump. Did you go to the East-West Shrine game?
I did not. I went to the Senior Bowl.
Okay, so but in the East-West Shrine practices and in the game itself, Siegel was great. And maybe I think the Niners might have met him there. Sure. Yeah. But, that's a good one. I'm going to go – I'll tell you, there's a guy who I was watching today that, man, this guy looks like a ton. Now, I don't know because he's so new to the team, Steph, and I don't know, I'm trying not to put too much credence in practice, right? Because, sometimes you see things that aren't really real. But Jordan Jefferson is just a huge man who can really move. they got him and they moved Evan Anderson out. And I thought, man, they're going to risk Anderson. Then they brought Anderson back and they got him on the practice squad. So it wasn't that big a deal. But I was looking at the Bruce Feldman freaks list from a couple of years ago, and he had Jordan Jefferson on there. The guy power cleans 395 and he benches 500. He benches like 495 and he squats like 700. I mean, it's some crazy amount of weight. And then you see this guy in the field and he's explosive and actually kind of fast. But he's huge. And he's just, he's going to be an interesting guy because Kasarik is a fantastic coach. And you can see him kind of encouraging this guy at practice today. He's like, I love that hand. He was basically just, wanted to swipe away from the offensive lineman's hands. And Jefferson had a great rep where he did it and exploded to the quarterback. He, to me, is just, that guy's big and talented. There's no question about it. But I would go Nick Martin. I just think Nick Martin, I think we've maybe people that were like, he wasn't good that first game. It's like, bro, seriously, really? And this guy's flying all over the place. He's fast. He's strong. He was productive. This guy's pretty good. All right. I mean, just let him shake off the rust a little bit. Did you have Nick on your show after the draft?
I didn't have him on my show, but, I talked about him extensively leading up to the draft because, he was one of those linebackers that did look like a 49ers linebacker. If you remember everything that I've said about, prospects and linebackers is that they have to play with their hair on fire if they're going to play for the 49ers. That is one thing they look for more than anything. They don't even care if you're going to the right spot or not, at least early on, because they feel like they can fix that. And certainly after those first 3 preseason games, by the third one, we saw Nick Martin looked a heck of a lot better, going to the right place and not overrunning things. So yeah, I like that one too. I'm a big fan of what I saw from him, and just the strides that he took in just such a short amount of time was really impressive.
One of our chatters, that's weak sauce, Larry. I was benching 725 in high school. Stop it. Like, come on. Steph, great to see you. Great to have you on the show. Tell people who maybe don't follow you on X or on YouTube where they can find you and what kind of stuff you put out, how often you put it out there.
Yeah, so you guys can find me at Steph49K on all the major social media platforms. I do live shows on my YouTube channel, again, under Steph49K. And if you're interested in the audio version of my podcast, that is 49 Carats Podcast. Going to be doing a number of shows this year. Going to have Wayne on my shows on Thursday.
Breezy.
So, yeah, that's going to be a fun one. Continuing to do Bully Ball with Gold Standard Network. Going to have Weston on Player of the Week show on Monday. So, yeah, it'll be a pretty fun season and ready to get back into the swing of it.
You ever streaming with my guy Vish?
I have streamed with Vish before. I love Vish.
Yeah,
he's just so busy.
Vish is busy, but he is the man. He's the man.
Yeah.
Steph, great to see you. Have a great night. Thanks for jumping on KMBR and chopping it up and talking Niners. We'll do it again maybe in a few weeks.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Larry.
Steph Sanchez stopping by and good stuff. I mean, and that's the beauty of the 49er kind of media community is that there's just so many different people out there. There are people that cover the Niners for major publications, people that cover the Niners for their own, thing. And they're, something that they started up, and it's just very, very cool. And so many of the Gold Standard does a nice job. And there's just a lot of people around the country who are huge Niner backers, fans, media people, and they're loving it. And I love it because it gives us all kind of a more unique perspective, or not a more unique perspective, a more broad perspective to hear everybody's thoughts on it. Someone says Vish is a doctor, Larry. So there you go. I didn't know that. There we go. EB says so many, but I chose Larry Chosen. Thank you. All right. And we got this one from 49ers at Red Zone. Great interview, Larry. Appreciate the overtime. Overtime? Oh, that's right. We've gone overtime. All right. That's going to do it for us. Niners Nightly in the books. We did go 9 minutes over. I am going to stream in about 20 minutes from now on the Krueger show. So if all of you guys want to join me over there, I'm going to we're going to break down and compare and contrast the two depth charts, Niners and Seahawks. I heard somebody say today that the Seahawks, if you go, player for player and position for position group, that they have a better depth chart than the Niners. So I don't know that that's the case, but I don't know that it's not the case. So I'm going to do that exercise at 7:30, and feel free to join me on the Krueger Show. Thanks to everybody. Hit like and subscribe on your way out the door, and thanks to KMBR for giving us the opportunity here on YouTube. Hope you guys enjoy it. Definitely follow KMBR on YouTube. They do great stuff. You can watch all their stuff around the clock. So good stuff. Half Dead says, Larry's the hardest working man in show business. I don't know about that. 49 Red Zone. We'll see you there, Krug. Peace, everybody. Have a great night. See you over on the Krug Show.